What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Eddie here. So we're just gonna go ahead and get right into it today, into the logbook entry number 3. I got back here, as you guys can see today, but we're gonna go right into the point. I want to talk about the Indy Pro. I'm sure that a lot of you guys want to hear about how the show went and just kind of the situations surrounding all of that. So uh, didn't really place as well as I would have liked to, which I feel like is kind of obvious by now, but I was initially, really kind of upset at the whole, situation. I felt like initially I didn't bring my best look. I felt like, it's just a continuation of what's been happening, you know, looking great the day before, looking great the day after, and just missing the mark the day of the show, which, over time can be extremely frustrating because, you put all this work in, for months, for weeks and months to get on that stage and to not show, your best package. And I mean, like anyone who competes or has competed a number of times understands that. And sometimes it does come down to, those small details. I mean, not sometimes, all the time. It's those small details that, have the biggest effect. And, to go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into the situation. I was at weight probably 3 weeks out, maybe a little less than that, but around 3 weeks out. And, weight was trending downwards every single day. I mean, I got to a low of maybe 217 and a half, 217.8. And I was feeling pretty good. We started eating into the show about 8 days out. And everything was still looking good. Everything was tracking. Physique was starting to come back to life a little bit. Um, Looking back, I think that we could have done things a little bit differently as far as the water protocol, is concerned, but we won't get into too much detail about that right now. That's something for a little bit later. But, going into the show, everything was on point, everything looked good. And then the morning of weigh-ins, I mean, I looked phenomenal that morning. I mean, that was probably the best that I've ever looked. I mean, I posted a picture a few days after the show of what I looked like that morning, and I'll put it up here so you guys can take a look at it real quick. But I mean, I looked incredible. I mean, the separation was there, the density was there, and the thing was, I was still pretty flat, to be honest with you. That probably wasn't me fully peaked out, and to still look like that, I was actually pretty amazed. But the problem was, I was over my weight cap. Right, my weight cap's 219. That morning I woke up, I was probably what, 223, 224. And that just came down to probably, eating one too many meals the night before, maybe. Um, but I also didn't sleep very well. The hotel I was in was complete garbage. I'm never gonna try and save money on the hotel again. I'm just gonna stay at the host hotel or stay at, one of the nicer ones closer to the venue, because the hotel situation just was not where it's at. But anyways, point is, I woke up a little bit over 223, 224. So I had to get up. We went to the gym, went to Midwest Muscle, and we just started posing. We were probably posing for a little over an hour, and the weight just wasn't moving. I kept getting on the scale every couple of minutes, and the weight was staying the same, 224, 224, 225. I started going up in weight at one point, and keep in mind, I haven't eaten anything. I haven't drank anything. I'm completely sapped. I'm exhausted. I'm lightheaded at this point from posing for over an hour, So we're like, you know what? Forget it. We just got to go hop in the sauna. So went to the local YMCA, hopped in the sauna. I did two 20-something minute sessions in the sauna, took my weight down from about 223, 224, all the way down to 217, 218. So I had a really big drop. I mean, that's what, 5, 6 pounds. I'm not the best at math, so maybe 5, 6 pounds of just straight water weight coming out of the muscles. And then again, still hadn't eaten or drank or anything that whole day. And weigh-ins were at, I believe, 4 o'clock. So like I said, haven't eaten or drinking anything, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm dying at this point, posing for an hour, sitting in the sauna for however long, 40, 45 minutes. We go to the venue, I step on the scale, I make weight, and I'm out of it, Um, and then we start eating, getting meals down. But by that point, the damage is already done, having to get up, not eat or drink anything. I already wasn't completely full as it was anyway, even over the weight cap. So that's one thing to consider moving forward. How viable is it to continue fighting this weight cap if even 4 or 5 pounds, 6 pounds over, I'm still not full. My muscle bellies still aren't full. I have very round and massive muscle bellies, a very wide structure, and it takes a lot to fill me out. So that's just something to think about moving forward. But, the damage is already done by this point. There's no way that I can completely fill out the physique in a couple of hours that night and going into showtime. So pretty much had to surrender to fate on that one, get up the next day. I look a little bit better. The body's coming back to life a little bit more. And backstage with coach getting pumped up, and he's like, man, you need to volumize. You need to volumize. And he's saying that I'm flat. The muscles just weren't popping against the skin. And if you know anything about, you know, black competitors specifically with darker and healthier skin tones, when we are flat, because that muscle's not pressing against the skin, we already don't have the thinnest skin anyway. But when we're flat, that gives the illusion that we're less conditioned than what we are, because the muscle's not pressing against the skin to create that thin skin illusion, right? So I get on stage, I do my thing, finished middle of the third call out. I went back and looked at everything. There could have been an argument for me to still be in the top 10, but it is what it is. We're not gonna fight that. But we talked to Bill Sibilia after the show, got our feedback, and the feedback was probably as good as it could have been given the circumstance. He said that the physique was great. All the body parts are there. He really had nothing to suggest that we work on as far as the body is concerned, muscle wise. He just said to come in more conditioned. In a lineup like that, you have to come in, peeled. And as you know, like I just said, if you're not as full as you can be with a physique like mine, you look less conditioned than what you are. Mind you, I'm conditioned. Like, I'm not out of shape by any means, right? So it's a learning lesson, as always. My physique just, it needs to be filled out properly, right? So, we're going into Atlanta here in a couple of weeks with the mindset of just coming in more conditioned, pushing this envelope a little bit harder as far as conditioning is concerned. We added some new things into the protocol that, I wouldn't normally mess with. But, like Ronnie Coleman said, to hang with the big boys, you got to do what the big boys do. So there's some new variables at play right now that I'm excited to see. And I can already see changing my physique in some insane ways. So that's pretty cool. And I know that the look in Atlanta will be much, much better. Much, 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 much better. I already today look better than I did on stage at Indy. I'm already more conditioned. I'm already fuller. Everything is moving in such a positive direction. So, and not to say that the look that was on stage at Indy was inherently bad. It really wasn't. I went back and looked at some videos, looked at some pictures, did some comparisons. I did improve from, my last couple shows last year. I was bigger, I was harder, I was denser, I was more conditioned. I looked more like a bodybuilder, which was kind of the goal. My legs have came up tremendously. And that was a personal goal of mine, to bring my legs up, and they came way up. So I was excited to see that. So I'm not going to sit here and say that the look was a complete failure. Of course not. I improved. It's bodybuilding is one of those things where you can come in improved and be and place worse. So as frustrating as that is, I have to recognize that, I did get better. I may not have been able to see how much better I have gotten because of the circumstances surrounding having to make weight, and even over my weight cap still not being completely filled out. But I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't get better. I am actually kind of happy with the way that I looked as far as improvements are concerned. Now, stage, what I brought to the stage as far as what was needed to compete, no. But looking at it from a comparison standpoint of my last time being on stage, yes, the improvements were very noticeable. You know, if I bring the look that I know that I can bring, I know that I'll place well. So that's kind of just the goal here, you guys, to bring a much better look to Atlanta and come out there swinging and, you know, get back in that first call out where I belong. So that's the goal, and we'll see what happens after that. Like I said, if my best look is in fact over my weight limit, which I'm starting to see that it is, you know, maybe some decisions need to be made moving forward. And, you know, I'm sure you guys know what that means. And, you know, this is bodybuilding, right? So we'll make those decisions here in the near future. But I'm excited for Atlanta. I'm excited to bring a much better package. Thankful that I had the opportunity to compete at Indy. It was a great show experience, probably one of the better show experiences that I've ever had. So, you know, I definitely don't regret doing the show, but I'm also extremely excited to come back better in Atlanta. And I hope that you guys are excited to see something better as well.